What if the greatest ancient mind who ever lived looked at you in that exact moment and said, "You are committing the one unforgivable mistake a human being can make against himself"? Aristotle, the man who tutored Alexander the Great and built the foundations of Western thought, never wasted words. When he spoke about human dignity, he did not speak softly. He declared that every single human soul possesses by nature a greatness, megalopsychia, that must never be surrendered, not to kings, not to crowds, not even to your own fear. Today we translate megalopsychia as great-souledness or proper pride, but those words feel weak compared to what Aristotle actually meant. He meant the calm, unshakable conviction that you are worthy of great things because your rational soul is ordered toward greatness by its very essence, not arrogance, not the puffed-up vanity of someone who needs applause. The exact opposite, the quiet, immovable certainty that you do not need to beg for your place in the world because existence itself has already granted it. Let that sink in for a second. The moment you diminish yourself, the moment you make yourself small because someone might laugh, someone might judge, someone might not like you, you are not being humble. You are betraying the very structure of your own soul. In the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle writes, "The great-souled man claims and deserves great things. He is justified in despising what is small-minded because he sees things as they truly are." Notice the order. He claims great things because he first knows he deserves them. The deserving comes before the claiming. Most of us get this completely backwards. We wait for the world to tell us we are allowed to stand tall, and because the world rarely gives permission, we spend our lives crouching. Aristotle refuses to let you do that. He says the great-souled person thinks himself worthy of great things and is indeed worthy of them. Worthiness is not something you earn later. It is something you recognize now. The moment you see clearly what a human being is, a rational animal capable of contemplating the eternal, the idea of shrinking becomes absurd. It would be like the sun apologizing for shining. But someone will say, "That sounds arrogant." Aristotle anticipated that objection 2,400 years ago. He answers, "Arrogance belongs to those who claim honors they do not deserve." The great-souled man claims exactly what he deserves, no more and no less. He does not exaggerate his worth, and this is the part most people miss. He does not underestimate it either. Both are vices. To overestimate is hubris. To underestimate is what Aristotle calls small-souledness, micropsychia, and he considers it just as deformed as its opposite. Small-souledness is the vice of the person who thinks himself worthy of less than he is worthy. Read that again. Every time you say, "I'm not good enough," "I don't belong here," who am I to speak? You are not practicing humility. You are practicing a vice against your own nature. Aristotle is brutal on this point. He says the small-souled person deprives himself of the good things he deserves and seems to have something bad in him because he refuses to acknowledge his own excellence. In other words, self-diminishment is not a moral virtue. It is a moral failing. Why does this matter so much to Aristotle? Because the entire ethical project of the Nicomachean Ethics rests on one central idea. Human life has a natural function, ergon, and happiness, eudaimonia, is the activity of living in accordance with that function in an excellent way. The function of a human being is to exercise reason in contemplation and action. When you shrink, when you silence your mind, when you refuse to act because you feel unworthy, you are abandoning your function. You are choosing non-existence over the full expression of your being. Imagine a lion that decides to live like a mouse because the other animals might mock him for roaring. That is what you do every time you make yourself small. In the rhetoric, Aristotle adds another layer. He says that the great-souled man is not given to wonder, because nothing seems astonishing to him compared to his own internal standard. He is not dazzled by wealth, fame, or power, because he already possesses something greater, the dignity of a soul that knows its own worth. External things can be taken away. The internal recognition of your own greatness cannot. This is why Aristotle insists that true dignity cannot be given or taken by others. It is not a social status. It is an internal posture. Others can insult you, ignore you, or oppress you, but they cannot make you unworthy unless you agree to the insult. The moment you stop agreeing, everything changes. But how do you stop agreeing when the whole world seems to demand that you bow? That is the question we will answer next. How Aristotle's understanding of habit, courage, and the golden mean turns the recognition of your greatness into something you live every single day, not just something you feel in rare moments of inspiration. Because knowing you are great is useless if you still act small tomorrow morning when the alarm goes off and the old voices return. We are just getting started. The next part will show you the exact mechanism Aristotle gives us to destroy small-souledness forever. And it is far more practical and far more ruthless than you have ever imagined. You now know that shrinking is not humility. It is a vice. You now know that your soul, by its very structure, is ordered toward greatness. But knowledge alone changes nothing. Aristotle never tired of repeating, we are not studying these things to know what virtue is, but to become good. So the real question is no longer, am I allowed to stand tall? The real question is, how do I make standing tall my permanent, unbreakable habit? Aristotle gives the answer in one sentence that most people read too quickly. We become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, brave by doing brave acts. In the same way, we become great-souled by doing the acts of the great-souled person day after day until the mask becomes the face. This is the doctrine of habituation, hexis. Virtue is not a feeling. Virtue is not a momentary burst of courage. Virtue is a stable disposition that you hammer into your soul through repetition, the same way a blacksmith tempers steel. The small-souled person feels unworthy, so he speaks softly, avoids risk, and apologizes for existing. Every time he does that, he deepens the disposition of smallness. The groove becomes a trench. The trench becomes a grave. The great-souled person feels worthy, so he speaks clearly, takes the space that belongs to him, and refuses to apologize for his existence. Every time he does that, he deepens the disposition of greatness. The groove becomes a highway, and one day he wakes up and realizes he no longer has to try. He simply is. The difference between the two is not intelligence, not childhood trauma, not social class. The difference is the direction in which they have trained their actions, thousands of times when no one was watching. Aristotle is merciless here. If you want to stop diminishing yourself, you must start acting as if you are already worthy, long before the feeling arrives. The feeling follows the action. It never precedes it. You do not wait to feel brave in order to act bravely. You do not wait to feel worthy in order to act worthy. This is why Aristotle places such enormous weight on the virtue of courage, Andrea. Courage is not primarily about facing death in battle. It is about facing the smaller deaths we die every day. The death of our ego when we risk rejection. The death of our comfort when we speak truth. The death of our invisibility when we claim the spotlight that is rightfully ours. Every single time you choose silence because you are afraid of sounding stupid, you practice cowardice. Every single time you choose to speak, even though your voice shakes, you practice courage. And courage, practiced long enough, becomes magnanimity, the greatness of soul that no longer even notices the old fear. Listen to how Aristotle describes the great-souled man in the Nicomachean Ethics. He is the sort of man who will face danger, and when he does face it, will act with great force, because he thinks it noble to do so and shameful not to. Translate that into everyday life. He is the sort of person who will raise his hand in the meeting, ask for the promotion, publish the book, start the business, end the toxic relationship, because he thinks it noble to live fully and shameful to live half alive. Notice the word shameful. Aristotle believes that the deepest motivation for the great-souled person is not desire for reward. It is contempt for what is beneath him. He does not fear being laughed at. He fears becoming laughable. He does not fear failure. He fears the slow suicide of a life spent hiding. This is the golden mean applied to pride, deficiency, small-souledness, micropsychia, refusing what you deserve, excess, empty vanity, show notes, claiming what you do not deserve, mean, great-souledness, megalopsychia, claiming exactly what you deserve, neither more nor less. Most modern people live so far on the side of deficiency that they mistake the mean for excess. They hear someone speak with calm confidence and immediately label it arrogance. Aristotle would laugh. He would say, "No, you have simply never seen a human being functioning properly." In the Eudemian Ethics, he goes further. The great-souled man is justified in looking down on others because his judgment is true. That sentence shocks us today, but only because we have forgotten what true judgment is. The great-souled man is not comparing bank accounts or follower counts. He is comparing how closely each person lives to the excellence that their rational soul makes possible. Seen from that standard, most of us are crawling when we were born to fly. His looking down is not cruelty, it is sorrow mixed with refusal to join the crawl. But here is the part that will turn your stomach in the best possible way. Aristotle says, the great-souled man cannot let anyone else except a friend determine his life. Why? Because to allow another person to define your worth is to surrender the very thing that makes you human, your capacity for rational self-direction. Every time you let someone's opinion shrink you, you are handing over the steering wheel of your soul. Every time you refuse, you take it back. And yet Aristotle is not calling for isolation. He is calling for hierarchy of the right kind. Friends, true friends, are allowed to influence you because they love your soul and want it to flourish. Everyone else? Their opinions are noise unless they have earned the right to be heard. This is why the great-souled man speaks and acts openly. He has nothing to hide, nothing to prove, nothing to fear. He is not performing confidence. He has become it. We are reaching the edge of something dangerous now, because the next step is where most people give up. You can nod at everything said so far and still wake up tomorrow, making yourself small. The difference between information and transformation is one thing only: deliberate, repeated, uncomfortable action. In the next block, we will walk straight into the fire. We will take Aristotle's most terrifying weapon, the deliberate practice of claiming your full stature in the exact situations where you most want to hide. And we will apply it step by step until the old version of you is burned away and something unrecognizable stands in its place. You will not like every part of what is coming, but if you do it, you will never again recognize the person who used to apologize for breathing. Until now, we have been preparing the ground. Now we cross the point of no return. Aristotle does not merely describe the great-souled man, he gives you the precise training program to become him. The program has 3 phases that must be practiced simultaneously every day for the rest of your life. If you omit even one phase, the transformation fails. Phase 1, deliberate exposure to the situations that trigger small-souledness. Phase 2, forced articulation of your true worth in those exact situations. Phase 3, immediate contempt for any action that smells of shrinking. Most people never escape Phase 1 because they spend their lives avoiding the trigger instead of walking into it on purpose. Aristotle forbids avoidance. In the Nicomachean Ethics, he writes, "We become brave by habituating ourselves to despise and endure terrifying things." Translate terrifying things into modern language. The meeting where you are afraid to speak, the social setting where you feel invisible, the confrontation you dread, the request you believe will be denied, the room where everyone seems more qualified than you. You do not wait until you feel ready. You do not wait until the fear disappears. You schedule the exposure the same way you schedule sleep, because greatness of soul is not a talent. It is a muscle built by controlled stress. Every single day you must manufacture at least one moment in which the old impulse to shrink appears. And then you must step straight into it while the impulse is still screaming. That is the only way the nervous system rewires. Phase 2 begins the moment you are inside the fire. You force yourself to speak and act exactly as the great-souled person would. Not tomorrow, not when you lose 10 pounds or get the degree or have more money. Right now, with shaking voice if necessary, with red face if necessary, with imperfect words if necessary. Aristotle is explicit in the posterior analytics. The soul never thinks without an image. If you want to install a new identity, you must give the soul a continuous stream of new images of yourself acting with full stature. Every image is a vote cast for the person you are becoming. After 10,000 votes, the election is no longer in doubt. This is why, says the great-souled man, is open in his hates and open in his loves. Speaks the truth, except when he speaks with irony to the common herd, and will not bear being ruled by others. Those are not personality quirks. Those are deliberate practices. Practice 1, open declaration of what you love and hate. The small-souled person hides preferences to avoid conflict. The great-souled person states them calmly without apology, because his preferences are the expression of a rational soul ordering its world. Start small. I dislike this music. I prefer to work alone. This goal matters more to me than your approval. Say it out loud to real people today. Practice 2. Truth speaking without cushioning. The small-souled person wraps every opinion in 10 layers of maybe, perhaps, I could be wrong. The great-souled person speaks the truth as he sees it, slowly and clearly, because truth is noble and evasion is servile. Remove the verbal shrinking. No more, just my 2 cents. No more, sorry to interrupt. No more upward inflection that turns statements into questions. Practice 3. Refusal to be ruled. Every time someone tries to guilt you, shame you, or pressure you into acting beneath your dignity, you answer with calm refusal, not anger, not explanation, simple, immovable refusal. I will not. No, that is not acceptable. Aristotle says the great-souled man is not given to hasty anger, but when he is moved, his anger is great. Save the anger for real violations of justice. For everything else, quiet refusal is enough. Phase 3 is the weapon that locks the first 2 phases in place. Immediate, deliberate contempt for shrinking behavior. The moment you catch yourself apologizing for existing, speaking too softly, slouching, dodging eye contact, or agreeing when you disagree, you do not forgive yourself gently. You turn the same disdain on that behavior that the great-souled man turns on cowardice. Aristotle writes in the Rhetoric that shame is a kind of pain and agitation concerning evils, present, past, or future, that appear to bring disgrace. The great-souled man feels shame only when he acts beneath himself. He trains himself to feel that shame instantly, like touching a hot stove, so the hand jerks back before the burn can deepen. Most modern therapies try to remove shame. Aristotle weaponizes it, but only the right kind. Shame at being less than you are capable of being. Combine the 3 phases, and something ferocious happens. After 90 days, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, you cross an invisible threshold. The old reflexes stop appearing. The voice that used to whisper, "Who do you think you are?" falls silent, not because you argued with it, but because it has nothing left to feed on. You will recognize the threshold when, for the first time in your life, you walk into a room and the question of whether you belong does not even arise. It is not confidence. Confidence still compares. This is something quieter and more final. It is the simple recognition that the room is enriched by your presence, and any room that is not is a room you can leave without loss. In the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle warns that the great-souled man will possess beautiful and profitless things, rather than profitable and useful ones. Translation: once the new identity is stable, you will find yourself walking away from people, jobs, and environments that require you to shrink, even when those things pay well or offer security. You will do it without drama, the way you take off a coat that no longer fits. That moment is coming for you. But first, one final piece is missing. So far, we have spoken as if greatness of soul were only about the self. Aristotle refuses to let us stop there. In the next block, we face the most uncomfortable truth of all. True megalopsychia is inseparable from magnanimity toward others. The same man who refuses to bow to anyone also becomes capable of a generosity so vast that it shocks the small-souled world around him. If you think you already understand Aristotle, wait until you see what he demands of the person who finally, fully stops diminishing himself. You have trained the muscle. You have walked into the fire every day. You have spoken the truth without cushioning, refused to be ruled, and treated every shrinking impulse with the contempt it deserves. One morning, you wake up and realize the old voice is gone. You stand taller without trying. You enter rooms and the air shifts, not because you announced yourself, but because something in you has become undeniable. Now, Aristotle looks you in the eye and asks the final terrifying question: what will you do with a soul that can no longer be made small? Most people assume the answer is power, dominance, or at least a quieter form of self-centeredness. They have never read Aristotle carefully. The moment a human being achieves true greatness of soul, something unexpected happens. The horizon of his concern widens until it includes every other rational soul capable of the same excellence. The great-souled man does not become cruel. He becomes magnanimous. In the original sense of the word, megalopsychos, large-souled, large enough to carry the weight of other people's potential without resentment. In the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle writes one of the most misunderstood sentences in all of philosophy. The great-souled man is especially concerned with honors and dishonors. Yet he will be moderately pleased to receive great honors from excellent men, because that is what he deserves, or even less, since there can be no honor equal to perfect virtue. Honors from ordinary men, however, he will utterly despise. People read that and think he is an elitist. They miss the second half of the paragraph, the part almost no one quotes. But he will be entirely gentle and unassuming toward those of moderate station, because to be superior to them is not easy and is becoming, whereas to lord it over them is vulgar. Gentle, unassuming, those are not the words we expect after 2,000 pages of training to never bow, yet there they are. The same man who will not let a king diminish him will not diminish a peasant either, because once you truly see the structure of a human soul, once you see that every rational being is ordered toward contemplation and excellence, the idea of treating anyone as less becomes as absurd as treating yourself as less once was. This is the final paradox of megalopsychia. The highest pride and the deepest generosity are the same disposition looked at from two sides. The great-souled man gives help openly and receives help reluctantly, not because he feels superior in essence, but because he knows that giving enlarges the giver and receiving, when unnecessary, diminishes him. Yet when someone truly needs help and he is in a position to give it without losing his own stature, he gives lavishly, without hesitation, and without keeping score. Aristotle says, he is ashamed to receive benefits, because to receive is the mark of the inferior, but he does good services in return, so that the other may be more in his debt. He turns every favor into a new debt owed to the receiver, because he refuses to let anyone feel small for having needed him. Read that again. The man who spent years learning never to feel small now spends the rest of his life making sure no one around him ever feels small either. This is why Aristotle declares that perfect virtue is impossible without greatness of soul, And greatness of soul is impossible without every other virtue, especially justice and generosity. The crown of the ethical life is not self-assertion alone. It is self-assertion that has become so secure it can afford to forget itself in the service of something larger. You began this journey because you were tired of shrinking. You end it by discovering that the moment shrinking became impossible for you, contempt became impossible for you too. The small-souled man envies, resents, and tears down because every excellence in another person feels like an accusation against his own defect. The great-souled man has no envy left because he already possesses the only thing that matters, the activity of his own soul in accordance with excellence. Everything else is external, and external things no longer move him. In the final pages of the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle quietly reveals the ultimate purpose of all this training. It was never about feeling better than others. It was about becoming capable of the highest human activity, contemplation, theoria. The great-souled man, having secured his internal kingdom against every external threat, is finally free to turn his mind upward toward the unchanging, the eternal, the divine. And when he does, he discovers something that finishes the transformation forever. The same dignity he claimed for himself shines equally in every human soul that chooses to claim it. He no longer sees humanity as a hierarchy of worth. He sees it as a field of potential excellence. Some seeds dormant, some sprouting, a few in full flower. His final posture is neither superiority nor equality in the modern flattened sense. It is recognition. Recognition that every human being you meet is, at the deepest level, raw material for greatness. Recognition that your job is no longer to protect your own dignity. That battle is over, but to hold the mirror steady so others can see their own. That is the last and highest act of the great-souled person. To live in such a way that your simple presence becomes an invitation for everyone around you to stop diminishing themselves. You began by refusing to make yourself small. You end by making it impossible for anyone else to stay small in your company. Everything you have done, every uncomfortable exposure, every forced truth, every quiet no, was not for applause, not for status, not even for happiness in the shallow sense. It was for this, to become the kind of soul that can look at another human being who is still shrinking and say, without arrogance and without pity, stand up. You were never meant to kneel. That is Aristotle's final lesson. That is the life you now owe to yourself and to every soul you will ever meet. So I leave you with one reflection and one assignment. Reflection. Every time you are tempted to diminish yourself again, and the temptation will still come, though weaker and rarer, remember that the betrayal is no longer only against you. It is against every person who will watch you tomorrow and decide, consciously or not, whether human dignity is real or just a story philosophers tell. Assignment. Today, and every day from now on, find one moment to treat another person as if their soul already possesses the greatness Aristotle described. Speak to them, look at them, listen to them as if they are already the fully actualized version of themselves. Do it especially when they are acting small. Do it without preaching. Just hold the space. Because the fastest way to lock your own greatness in place forever is to start giving it away. You now carry something that cannot be taken from you. Guard it, by never letting it rest. The world is full of people who have forgotten what they are. Be the living proof that memory can be restored, one upright spine at a time. And if this has moved something in you, if something in your chest is standing taller right now, then do this for me. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thank you for walking this path with me. Now, go live it.